How have video games affected culture, and can it be considered art? Where did it all begin? Home video games took off with the release of the ZX Spectrum and the Commodore 64 in 1982. These computers would read data stored on tape cassettes. You knew it was working when your TV screen looked like this and you heard this irritating sound. Once the process was completed, you could play the latest games on the market, such as Scrabble, chess, Patience, or the now iconic Pong. The computer's ability to read code from tapes allowed people to share, copy, and create their own games. A good example of this would be Matthew Smith in 1983, who created Manic Miner and became a huge success. This was the first game ever to feature in-game music. Here are some other examples of games from the early 80s. Video games are by definition interactive games played on a computer with a controller or a keyboard or mouse. Statistics show that as of 2004, almost every child in America had either a PlayStation 2, an Xbox, or a GameCube in their homes. It is almost impossible to have not been exposed to video games at this point in time. As video games are a relatively new concept, people still believe that video games cannot be considered art, and that video games are either crude, childish, or a waste of time. What types of video games are there? Who plays them? Well, for example, each type of video game has different players or fan bases. Mario and Sonic tend to be for small children, aged 6 to 11. Games such as Mortal Kombat, Doom are for a more mature audience. They are rated and sold for a different medium. This is why there are no brightly colored lights or cute animals in Doom. It simply does not fit the game. In recent years, there have been much more types of video games with different genres being born. For example, the game The Last of Us has been described as an action-adventure survival horror game, with emphasis on emotional relationships. This is a vast difference from what was created beforehand, such as Wolfenstein or Pac-Man. Video games tend to have two sides, hardcore gamers and casual gamers. Casual gamers tend to enjoy games such as Portal, Journey, many other relaxing and stress-relieving games. Hardcore gamers tend to shy away from the complete polar opposite. The games they like to play typically revolve around high performance and hair-splitting reaction time. What is art? Art is typically defined as the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination, typically in a visual form such as painting or sculpture, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power. When comparing to video games, you'll find that most games have all of these criterion, and therefore logical thinking, which leads you to believe that they would be considered art by all.
Let's keep moving.
This is not the case. I believe games such as this should be claimed as art because of the excellent combination of high-quality sound effects, storyline, and the high-definition graphics culminate in a full immersion into the video game. Who says video games cannot be art? Roger Ebert, one of the best critics in America, believes that video games could not be considered art, as he believes that video games do not provoke emotions or teach you anything about human experiences or relationships with others. He argues the art is sometimes practicable, and people know what to expect when they get a picture or a play. He then recounts the tale of Romeo and Juliet. If there had been a happy ending instead of the original sad one, the audience would have been in uproar. Another person that says video games are not art is the game designer Hideo Kojima. He says that it shouldn't be classed as art because that's not its main focus. He wants everyone to be completely happy with his games. The artwork is secondary for him. Although Kojima states that the graphics are secondary, it cannot be denied how amazingly detailed this game looks. Without the graphics, I do believe that this game wouldn't have sold just as well as it did. Professor Tiffany Holmes, who teaches history of electronic media, argues that new video games pay homage to classics such as Pac-Man and Doom. This is known as the Duchamp style, or ready-made found art. She believes this was at the point in which commercial games and digital art came together. Using existing ideas, new games were created, with better graphics, sound effects, and more complicated storylines. In this clip, you have seen an Easter egg of Doom in the modern game Rage. Video game artwork was finally acknowledged in 2012 as being art in its own right when the prestigious Smithsonian American Art Museum held an exhibition entitled The Art of Video Games. The Museum of Modern Art in New York also has an exhibit of 40 different video games they deemed instrumental in the gaming world. How have video games affected popular culture? Video games have penetrated popular culture without most people knowing it. The most obvious and prevalent crossover medium has been from video to the silver screen. For example, most people might not know that Lara Croft, Tomb Raider, Mortal Kombat, Pokemon, Resident Evil Apocalypse, or Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time were actually based on video games. Other movies, such as Wreck-It Ralph and Mario, are more obvious crossovers, with Pixel using retro games as the main storyline. Another way in which we know video games have influenced popular culture is by the sayings that have now infiltrated the internet and internet forums. Here are a few of my favorites. In conclusion, I believe that you can prove that video games are art by the process of criterion. By looking at the criterion for art and finding matches in video games, I hypothesize that you can make an accurate prediction if something is art or not. To find the criterion for art, we must go back to the question, what is art and how do we define it? The answer we use being the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination, typically in a visual form such as painting or sculpture, producing work to be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power. In conclusion, without a doubt, video games are here to stay and will continue to influence and preoccupy people of all ages for some time to come. Art is subjective. Not everyone is going to like the same piece of artwork or feel the same way towards it. Therefore, I feel it's unfair to judge video games en masse as to whether it is deemed art or not. Art, like music, is personal, and only you can be the judge as to whether you like it or not.